will joyfully and without delay return home to his wife and children, undisturbed by thoughts of the enemy he has killed either at close quarters or with weapons operating at a distance. It is worthy of note that the primitive races which still inhabit the earth, and who are certainly closer to primitive man than we, act differently in this respect, or have so acted as long as they did not yet feel the influence of our civilization. The savage, such as the Australian, the Bushman, or the inhabitant of Terra del Fuego, is by no means a remorseless murderer. When he returns home as victor from the war path, he is not allowed to enter his village or touch his wife until he has expiated his war murders through lengthy and often painful penances. The explanation for this is, of course, related to his superstition. The savage fears the avenging spirit of the slain. But the spirits of the fallen enemy are nothing but the expression of his evil conscience over his blood guilt. Behind this superstition there lies concealed a bit of ethical delicacy of feeling which has been lost to us civilized beings. Pious souls who would like to think us removed from contact with what is evil and mean will surely not fail to draw satisfactory conclusions in regard to the strength of the ethical impulses which have been implanted in us from these early and forcible murder prohibitions. Unfortunately, this argument proves even more for the opposite contention. Such a powerful inhibition can only be directed against an equally strong impulse. What no human being desires to do does not have to be forbidden. It is self-exclusive. The very emphasis of the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," makes it certain that we are descended from an endlessly long chain of generations of murderers, whose love of murder was in their blood as it is perhaps also in ours. The ethical strivings of mankind, with the strength and significance of which we need not quarrel, are an acquisition of the history of man. They have since become, though unfortunately in very variable quantities, the hereditary possessions of people of today. Let us now leave primitive man and turn to the unconscious in our psyche. Here we depend entirely upon psychoanalytic investigation, the only method which reaches such depths. The question is, what is the attitude of our unconscious towards death? In answer, we may say that it is almost like that of primitive man. In this respect, as well as in many others, the man of prehistoric times lives on, unchanged, in our unconscious. Our unconscious, therefore, does not believe in its own death. It acts as though it were immortal. What we call our unconscious, those deepest layers in our psyche which consist of impulses, recognizes no negative or any form of denial, and resolves all contradictions, so that it does not acknowledge its own death, to which we can give only a negative content. The idea of death finds absolutely no acceptance in our impulses. This is perhaps the real secret of heroism. The rational basis of heroism is dependent upon the decision that one's own life cannot be worth as much as certain abstract common ideals. But I believe that instinctive or impulsive heroism is much more frequently independent of such motivation, and simply defies danger on the assurance which animated Hans, the stone cutter, a character in Ansengrube, who always said to himself, "Nothing can happen to me." Or that motivation only serves to clear away the hesitations which might restrain the corresponding heroic reaction in the unconscious. The fear of death, which controls us more frequently than we are aware, is comparatively secondary, and usually the outcome of the consciousness of guilt. On the other hand, we recognize the death of strangers and of enemies, and sentence them to it just as willingly and unhesitatingly as primitive man. Here there is indeed a distinction which becomes decisive in practice. Our unconscious does not carry out the killing, it only thinks and wishes it. But it would be wrong to underestimate the psychic reality so completely in comparison to the practical reality. It is really important, and full of serious consequences. In our unconscious, we daily and hourly do away with all those who stand in our way, all those who have insulted or harmed us. The expression, "the devil take him," which so frequently crosses our lips in the form of an ill-humored jest, but by which we really intend to say, "death take him," is a serious and forceful death wish in our unconscious. Indeed, our unconscious murders even for trifles. Like the old Athenian law of Draco, it knows no other punishment for crime than death, and this not without a certain consistency, for every injury done to our almighty and self-glorifying self is at bottom a crimen lese majestatis. Thus, if we are to be judged by our unconscious wishes, we ourselves are nothing but a band of murderers, just like primitive man. It is lucky that all wishes do not possess the power which people of primitive times attributed to them. For in the crossfire of mutual maledictions, mankind would have perished long ago, not excepting the best and wisest of men, as well as the most beautiful and charming women. As a rule, the layman refuses to believe these theories of psychoanalysis. They are rejected as calumnies which can be ignored in the face of the assurances of consciousness, while the few signs through which the unconscious betrays itself to consciousness are cleverly overlooked. It is therefore in place here to point out that many thinkers who could not possibly have been influenced by psychoanalysis have very clearly accused our silent thoughts of a readiness to ignore the murder prohibition in order to clear away what stands in our path. Instead of quoting many examples, I have chosen one which is very famous. In his novel Père Goriot, Balzac refers to a place in the works of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, where this author asks the reader what he would do if, without leaving Paris, and, of course, without being discovered, he could kill an old mandarin in Peking, with great profit to himself, by a mere act of the will. He makes it possible for us to guess that he does not consider the life of this dignitary very secure. To kill your mandarin has become proverbial for this secret readiness to kill, even on the part of people of today. There are also a number of cynical jokes and anecdotes which bear witness to the same effect, such as the remark attributed to the husband, "If one of us dies, I shall move to Paris." Such cynical jokes would not be possible if they did not have an unavowed truth to reveal, which we cannot admit when it is baldly and seriously stated. It is well known that one may even speak the truth in jest. A case arises for our consciousness, just as it did for primitive man, in which the two opposite attitudes towards death, one of which acknowledges it as the destroyer of life, while the other denies the reality of death, clash and come into conflict. The case is identical for both. It consists of the death of one of our loved ones, of a parent or a partner in wedlock, of a brother or a sister, of a child or a friend. These persons we love are, on the one hand, a part of our inner possessions and a constituent of our own selves. But, on the other hand, they are also in part strangers and even enemies. Except in a few instances, even the tenderest and closest love relations also contain a bit of hostility, which can rouse an unconscious death wish.